Welcome to Galactic Collaboration Summit. In this session, I'm going to show you how you can administer Microsoft 365 groups with PowerShell. My name is Toni Pohl. I'm an IT consultant from Austria. If you are an IT administrator, it's often useful to automate specific tasks in Microsoft 365, like managing teams or creating new channels, adding permissions, adding owners, and so on. And in this session, I'm going to show you how this works. So Microsoft 365 groups are powering a lot of Microsoft 365 services like Calendar or Stream, SharePoint, Teams, and Yammer, and so on. So there's a lot of functionality we have in administering Microsoft 365 groups. That's more or less the set of services that spans over all the Office 365 services, and more or less they also replace the Office 365 security groups or distribution groups. So let's start with the essentials. First, we learn how we can connect with PowerShell to Microsoft 365. Then we see some essentials, how we can access the Microsoft 365 groups and teams. How is it going with the policies? How is it going with the properties of, let's say, a team, for example? How is it going with soft and delete and other stuff? To work with Microsoft 365 groups, we recommend to install these commandlets. First of all, it's recommended to use the Microsoft Teams PowerShell or the Azure AD Preview or Azure AD commandlets. And there are also some group PowerShells and some things you can access with the Microsoft Remote Exchange PowerShell. There are also two new modules available. That's, for example, the new Exchange Online PowerShell version 2 modules that have a capability to access Exchange Online for specific functions. And we have the new Microsoft Graph PowerShell, which is currently in beta, where you can access the Microsoft Graph with these commandlets. Install these modules with the install module commandlet directly from the Microsoft PowerShell gallery. Once you have done that, we can dive into the code and see how it goes. So let's try it out and run our first demos here. I'm using Visual Studio Code for modifying my scripts, and I would recommend to use that editor because it has a very cool functionality, also with all of the extensions that are available. And I already installed the PowerShell module extensions here. So I have a bunch of scripts here on my left side, starting with the connect, and then going through the groups essentials, teams essentials, and so on. So let's start first with the connect. We have seen that we need to install the modules first for the current user or for the current machine. And I'm currently using this version of PowerShell here. This is how you can access the various commands from these modules. So I'm importing the modules for Microsoft Teams. I'm importing Microsoft Azure AD Preview. Then I ask for credentials here. And this is an important step here to say, if I want to reuse the credentials in other or in multiple connections, I have to make them read only. Otherwise, they would be removed from the RAM storage and they wouldn't be available after the first connect. So we connect to Microsoft Teams here, we connect to Microsoft Azure here, and as a third connection, I'm connecting to Microsoft Remote Exchange PowerShell here. After that, I'm done. So let's run this first. I'm pressing F5 and copy and paste the username of a demo tenant here. Here we go. That's my administrator. And this is my password. So now I'm using the same credentials for connecting to Teams, connecting to Azure AD Preview, and using these credentials for connecting to Remote Exchange PowerShell. Okay, the connection worked. We are ready for using Teams, Azure AD Preview, and Exchange Online. Just to mention, here at the end of the description, I've also added the connection to the new Exchange PowerShell version 2 module, which is currently in preview. You can also use that to connect. This would be the connection, how you start that. And there are a lot of examples you can use for checking it out, how it would work with the Exchange Online PowerShell. Again, there's not the full functionality available currently, but Microsoft is working on that. And I expect to see a lot more functionality in the near future here in these new version 2 modules. Okay, so we are connected here. So let's see what we can do after we have this connection in place. So let's check out our group essentials. So I can use the command let get unified groups, and I simply run that here to get a list of all my unified groups, which means all my Microsoft 365 groups. So I see here is a list of all the groups that are existing in that Microsoft 365 tenant. Of course, I can use filter commands as we are used to do it in PowerShell to get all the teams that start with team, for example. Okay, we can also use this wonderful commandlet here, for example, to list all groups in descending order and say, give me the owner of and the members of each group here. It's all in a one-liner, which I broke in multiple lines here to see, okay, this specific group is owned by or managed by the administrator and by Megan B, for example, and I see there are 20 members in here, the access type is private and so on. So this is useful to get an overview, how are my groups managed? Or to say, I'm only interested in all groups that are private, for example, so I would run this wonderful command here and say, this is my filter. Okay, so I can get the teams. How can I now start manipulating them? So let's go to the teams essentials here. And I can create new teams here with the new teams command. You can see that's coming from the teams module. So I simply run the new My Today project team. This should create a new team with that display name and with that description with visibility private. Depending on the tenant size, this can take some seconds or can even take minutes, again, depending on the size of the tenant. So in my case, in my demo tenant, that was pretty fast. So I have a new group ID, which is this here. So I take that and copy it into my group variable and say, now please show me all the groups of that specific team I just created. In my case, it should show me only the general channel. Of course, I can try it out. I can check it here in my teams. So here's my today project, and this is my general channel, and this is brand new. We just created that team here with that PowerShell command. Let's go back. How can I create a new Teams channel? So let's run that here. New team channel with the name My Today channel. And if I switch back, we see it's already worked. Here's my second channel, My Today channel. You see this works really instantly. Give me all the members of that team here, get team user, and you can see there's currently only one user who is currently in the owner role. And here are some more commands like add more members to that group here. So I run this to have, in that case, 4 users in here, like my colleagues Nestor, Christy, and Diego. And if we check it out, we should see here, if I go to manage team, that we have now this one owner and we have 3 additional guests, which I just added here. You can see it's pretty straightforward. Of course, I can also remove a specific user like Diego, for example, and then I should have only these 3 members. Okay, so what can I do else here with the set team commandlet? I can change the properties of that team. So I can rename it, for example. I can change the visibility from private to public or organization-wide. I can set a classification if I'm using that description, and I can change the mail nickname, which is the email address of that team. So let me run this here. This might take a little bit longer, but here it is, my today team, and go back to my browser here, and it's already renamed in my new today team here. So that's also works pretty easy. If you want to get more properties like how are the settings of this team, use also the get team command. Then you would see all the various properties, like, for example, my new email address, the classification, and all these allow settings like do allow GIFs and so on. If you want to change anything of that, use the set team command. I put it in here in the old PowerShell Teams module. There were extra commands for that. Microsoft now reduced that and said, okay, please use get team and set team to set some of these properties. So if I do this here, we will see that now this setting Giphy content rating is set to strict, for example. So pretty straightforward. Of course, I can also remove channels here, like remove that new channel I just created. And if I look back here, that channel, the second channel now is gone here. And if I also want to remove the general channel, you will see that's not working because I'm not allowed to remove that because that channel is used for, let's say, some general Teams properties. So you can remove every channel, but not the general channel. Okay, with that, I just want to point out, of course, you can do all these operations with Microsoft Graph API. If you're a developer and developing against the Microsoft Teams API, you can do everything here with Microsoft Graph as well. Okay, let's jump to the next topic here, groups expiration. So here we're using the Azure AD preview or Azure AD commandlets. First of all, we want to check the lifecycle policy. And there's this commandlet get Azure ADMS group lifecycle policy. So if I run this here, we see this lifecycle policy here says remove or set all groups expired after 35 days. So let us check this here. So let me go to the Azure AD and go to the groups here. And here's the setting expiration in the Azure portal. And this is the setting what we have here. So we have a custom setting in place. That's the one with the ID we just saw. And it's set to 35 days. And we could also change it to say just to selected groups, etc. You can manage that with PowerShell as well. So I have here the lifetime ID now. So let me run this variable here. I've said, okay, I want to work with that. I could remove it here with that command. I could create a new one. I can modify it. So for example, I can set it to, let's say, 40 days here. And let's set it to this alternate email address. So I run this here. And if I check in my Azure portal, and I simply switch that here, going back to general and to expiration, this policy is now set to 40 days. So you can do the same thing in PowerShell as well. Of course, you can also manipulate that with the other commands here, like reset it, create it, delete it, etc. Okay, so we have seen how we can do this with PowerShell. Now let's come to the next topic here. How can I delete groups or modify or undelete them? So let's have a list of all the groups. Now I'm using the get Azure AD group command here. I see I have 3 groups starting with my, and I want to delete this one, this my new project. So let's take that ID here and say, let's remove it. So run this. And if I run this again here, let's see how fast it goes. Okay, it's already gone. My new today team is gone here. If you want to get a list of all the deleted groups in an Office 365 tenant, you could use the get Azure ADMS deleted group commandlet. So let me run this here. You will see that my new today team is now deleted. So every group that is deleted stays in the soft deleted status by default for 30 days. If you would like to restore it, you can use the restore Azure ADMS deleted directory. So that would be the undelete command. So I run this here for that one, and it should undelete the group. Be warned, this operation can take hours or even days, depending on the size of the team. Remember, there's a mailbox behind it. Remember, there's a SharePoint storage behind it. So depending on the objects that are stored in that in these storage systems, this can take minutes, like it did with my demo team, or it can take hours. If you really want to hard delete a group, then you would say, I want to remove the Azure ADMS deleted directory object here with no option to restore it any later. I would recommend to use the soft delete commandlet to say, I'm able to restore a group in the case it was a mistake. Let's check out how we can modify the owners here. So let's go to that script here. First of all, it's often useful to say, I have a policy in place that every group must be owned by 2 persons. So for example, if one person leaves the company, that there's a second person that's responsible for the content that's stored in that team or group. With this script block, we can get a list of all the Office 365 groups that are managed by less than 1 owner. You can see here's the condition, count is less than 2. So there some groups here, like my Tuesday project, my new Today team, etc., that are managed only by one person. So you could assign additional owners to these groups. In that case, Nestor would be added as an owner of these ownerless groups. What else can we do? We can get the groups here with the get Azure AD group. So let's run this. So here I get the ID of that group here. So let's use that here in that variable and say I want to now get the users of that team. And let's see, Miriam is now added as an owner with the role of an owner here to that team. And I can remove her as we've seen before. And if I run the Teams user group again, we should see that Miriam is now gone. She is no longer in that list of the users and owners. Okay, a question that's asked very often, how can I hide a group from Microsoft Outlook? So we have a script for that here in the hide scripts. So first of all, let's get a list of the groups again. Let's check it out with the get unified command. So again, I'm using that ID here. That's my new Today team here. And there are two commandlets for that. There's this set unified group identity hidden from address list. That's one. And the second would hide it from the Outlook clients, which is set unified group hidden from Exchange clients. And I also would run that here. Okay, if I want to run multiple groups, I would do it in a loop like here. The next topic that's helpful for IT administrators is to change the access type of existing Microsoft 365 groups. So for example, here we want to get a list of all the groups that have the access type public or private. And in that list here, we can see there's still some groups, maybe they have been created a long time ago, that are still public, which means that every member of that Microsoft 365 tenant can access these groups. So if you want to change that, that's easy with PowerShell. So here we say we want to get only the public groups. Let's run this command here. And then we see, okay, there are 4 lists, 4 groups that are of access type public. And now we want to change it to private. So let's run this to correct this. And here we go. Now, if we run this again, we should see that all the groups are now of access type private. So that's also useful and helpful for administrators to fix such issues. Another question that arises often is how you can set a user permission to send in the name of a group. So this is also possible here with the Exchange commandlet. So here we say we want to get the details of that team here, my new Today team, and we see that it has a recipient type of mail universal distribution group. And I could now add, in that case, Nestor Wilke to say he has permission to send in the name of the group. So if I run the add recipient commandlet with that name here, we can see that Nestor now has the permission, the access right to use send as. So he can go in his Outlook and say, I changed it from, it's not my personal email address, it's the email address of the group. Okay, with these commandlets here on the left side, you have more or less the basic tool set to manage Microsoft 365 groups. So we have seen how we can use PowerShell to automate management of Microsoft 365 groups. I want to add my bonus track here, which is running these scripts in an Azure Automation account. If you have an Azure subscription, you can run your PowerShell scripts in such an automation account, and I want to show you how you can use that here. So you can go to the automation accounts, create a new automation account, and when the blade opens, give that a name like GalacticSummit, short form. Select the subscription, select the resource group like GalacticSummit. And the location, in my case, I'm located in West Europe. And this here is important. This is the account that will be created when you run your script. So this is the service account, and that will be automatically created when we create this automation account. So let's create this here. Once we have created the automation account, that automation account should show up in our list here. In our case, it's GalacticSummit. So let's enter this automation account here. Every script here is stored in a so-called runbook. So let's check out the list of the runbooks. And these runbooks are created out of the box. So I want to create a new runbook, or I want to import a runbook. So I click on import a runbook and navigate to my scripts folder here in my PowerShell MasterClass. And I have a script prepared that's called create teams here. So let's pick that here and say the name of that is create team. The runbook type is of type PowerShell, and let's import it to our Azure runbook. So this is what we are going to do here. We want to connect to Microsoft Teams, and we want to create a new team with the name My Galactic Team here. Before we can use that script, we need to import the module because we need to have the module available for our PowerShell script. So let's first publish this script. Let's say, okay, this is the script I'm already done here, or almost done. So let's go to our modules here. And here you can see a list of modules that are already installed in our environment, in our automation account environment. And that environment will be deployed to the virtual machine where the script is executed. You can see there are already modules for Azure Resource Manager, some Microsoft PowerShell things, but Microsoft Teams is missing here. So we need to install it here. So we go to Browse Gallery and search for Teams here. And we get that PowerShell module to be able to be imported into our environment. So we simply click import here and say we want to import that from the PowerShell gallery into our environment. This was already successful, perfect. So if you need other modules as well, like for example, we use the Azure AD modules or Azure AD Preview, whatever you prefer, you can do the same with other modules. So I also import that here. Okay, the modules are imported. So the last thing we need to run our script are credentials. Remember, we need to connect to that. So how do we store these credentials? Thankfully, automation accounts provide us a method for that. Here in the shared resources, we can store variables, certificate, connections, and credentials. And I've already added an administrator here to say, okay, I want to use this account with that password here to connect to the Microsoft Teams API. So you can add it simply by clicking add a credential anytime. So let's go back to our runbooks. Here we go. Go to our script, create team here, and go to edit. So how do we get the credentials? Well, we can import it from our assets. So I can simply go to the assets credentials, and here you can see here's our admin credential, and I can simply click add to canvas, and this says I want to get that object, that information that's stored in that object credential called admin. So we simply say credentials equals get automation credentials, then we say connect to teams, and then we say create a new team with that display name. Perfect. So now we are done. Let's publish the script so we can run it. Another benefit here is that we, for example, could create a schedule for that script and say, I want to run that script, let's say, every day at midnight or so, or I can add a webhook for that script to say, I want to execute that script from, let's say, a Microsoft Flow or from some other service to say, please create a team with that parameters. In our case, we simply use it hard-coded and say, we want to run that script here that creates the My Galactic team here. So I started it already. You can see the status of that script is queued. Now the whole environment is deployed to that Azure virtual machine that runs in the background somewhere. And we will see that this script will be up and running right now in the next seconds. So actually the script should run pretty fast here. So I can click refresh anytime to see the update status of or the output here, depending what the script does. And we see it's already completed. Perfect. So let's check it out. So let's go to our Microsoft Teams client, which we have in this tab here, and scroll down if we already have this new team provisioned. And here it is, My Galactic Team. If I look at the team settings here, manage team, we should see the owners automatically, the administrator, the admin credential we provided, and there are 0 members and guests here. So this worked pretty well. So when we go back to the automation accounts, we see that there one script did run successfully. It was completed. And the Azure Automation Accounts provide you an environment to run your own runbooks, to run your own scripts here in the same way as it would run on your local machine, but with a predefined environment that's running in a safe and secure environment. So I hope you could see the benefits of using Azure Automation Accounts. If you have an Azure subscription, I highly recommend to use Azure Automation Accounts for your own scripts. So my session takeaways are, we have seen how we can use PowerShell modules for Azure Active Directory, for Exchange Online, for Teams, and for groups. We have seen some various methods, how we can access these teams and groups. We have seen how we can use Azure Automation Accounts to run our script, to host our scripts in a very central and safe way. And my tip here is use PowerShell wherever it's possible and automate as much as possible. I hope you liked the session and you got some useful content here with a lot of scripts and commandlets and modules. If you have any questions, please contact me at my Twitter account @work, and you can find all my scripts on my GitHub repository at github.com/tonypohl/GalacticSummit2020. Feel free to modify, adapt the scripts as needed. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of Galactic Collaboration Summit.
Thank you for being a part of the Galactic Collaboration Summit. Join the community and meet in-person world-class Microsoft and MVP speakers this autumn in Wiesbaden, Frankfurt, Germany, with 15 full-day tutorials and over 150 Microsoft 365 and Azure sessions at the combined European Collaboration Summit and European Cloud Summit from 26 to 28 October 2020. Community rocks.